Hello and welcome to this video game analysis from 7th Circle Gaming. Today we're going to be analyzing the survival crafting game, the Towers of Aghasba. You're welcome to debate my pronunciation of the title of this game in the comments section. However, right now it is disclaimer time. And as we always say, you're very welcome to pause the video and read through all of these at your leisure. But if disclaimers are not really your thing, just let the video run and we'll get to the gameplay footage soon enough. Welcome to the world of towers. From what we can see here, we notice immediately that the game is presented in a third-person perspective. We also notice that the game is rendered in a somewhat cartoonish art style, although it is realistic enough to be relatable. Moving on, players may notice that the user interface for this particular game is fairly typical of the survival crafting genre. At the top left-hand corner of the screen, in a not at all unusual location to find such a thing, we have the quest tracker. At the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, we have two bars, the one in blue indicating the available stamina, and the one above it in red indicating the hit points of the player character. At the bottom right-hand corner of the user interface, we have the mini-map. Not an unusual item or an unusual location for that item to appear in a game such as this. Finally, we come to the top right-hand corner of the screen, where we see what the game refers to as culture points. However, they function in the game something more like a morality system, as well as a currency. We'll talk more about that a bit later. Right now, just be aware of where this counter is located. That concludes our brief look at the user interface in the in-game world. Enjoy the rest of this gameplay footage as we show off what some of these story interludes are going to look like and the crafting system. More on that a bit later. For now, just enjoy the rest of the gameplay footage. Before we move on to the analysis proper, we do want to share with you one screenshot. The in-game world seems to be fairly large. We would estimate that it takes approximately 30 to 45 minutes to traverse it from east to west, depending on how well the player manages their stamina, and as long as an hour to traverse it from north to south, again, depending on how well the player manages their stamina. We will talk about this overworld map a little bit later, so for right now just make note of how long we would estimate that it takes to traverse the map. And speaking of that proper analysis, let's get started with it now, as we always do, by talking about immersion. Here the game has earned a score of 7 out of 15. Which is very nearly an absolutely average score of 7.5 out of 15, but it does lean more toward the low end of that range. Based on all of our evaluation sessions with the game, we would conclude that it is relying primarily on presentation and challenge to create immersion, with player agency, story, and audio being more of a tertiary concern. Moving on now to difficulty, where the game has earned a score of 3 out of 15. We don't have an awful lot to add here, as the game doesn't have any difficulty settings to speak of, and we couldn't conclude that even manipulating the settings from the settings menu would impact difficulty significantly in any way. On the positive end of the spectrum, the keybinds on the keyboard and mouse are fairly typical for the genre. Players utilizing a gamepad, whether it be a DS4 or another gamepad, may wish to reconfigure those keybinds to match what they're more typically used to. We do want to add one final note here that the game recognized our utilization of a gamepad without any additional manipulation of the settings menu. As far as lasting appeal is concerned, the game has once again earned a score of 3 out of 15, which is very low. While the in-game world and the game's story may appeal to some players, they will not necessarily appeal to all. Overall, Towers has earned a score of 4.33 out of 15, which we shouldn't need to clarify is very low. While the in-game world and the story may appeal to some players, it will not necessarily appeal to all. And with that, we end the purely objective portion of this video analysis. From this point on, please have your grains of salt handy as we progress to the highly subjective statements. Before we get into the controversial topic, we'll start off by addressing one feature that the game notably does not have, and that is the ability to add custom waypoints to the in-game map. Now then, let's move on to the potentially controversial topic of culture points. At least that's what the game refers to them as. However, they function in the game's world as something more like a currency and a morality system, which we do admit is fairly unique for a survival crafting game. Can't honestly say that we've seen that before. However, the morality that the game is seeking to advance is very much one of live in harmony with nature, which won't appeal to all players. In something of a rare move for this particular channel, as we do aim to be objective about our video game analysis, we are going to put our proverbial foot down and say it's perfectly okay for players to skip this game and play any one of a number of other survival crafting games that do similar things to what this one does. And on that final highly subjective note, we do congratulate everyone who watched all the way to the end of the video. To show your appreciation for how this channel approaches video game reviews or analysis, you know what you can do. All the other YouTubers ask for the same thing. We also heartily welcome any contrary opinions. Go ahead and leave those in the comments section below. If you have a game that you would really like to see analyzed on the channel, leave it down there as well. If we do not receive any additional requests, the next game on the channel is going to be Victory at Sea Atlantic. We look forward to seeing you on that video, and from 7th Circle Gaming, goodbye.